Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Greg Hamilton, and I am the CalTPA coordinator and visiting assistant professor in the School of Education at the University of Redlands. Welcome to the California Teaching Performance Assessment Instructional Cycle 1 Orientation. The CalTPA Instructional Cycle 1 represents a complete teaching cycle. Plan, teach, and assess, reflect, and apply for one specific lesson that you will develop and teach within a school placement. Cycle 1 focuses on developing an engaging, content-specific lesson for one class and 3 focus students based on what you learn about their diverse assets and needs, including prior knowledge, interests, and developmental considerations. The performance assessment guides are available on the School of Education website. Use the current students link to access these performance guides. Note there are separate performance guides for multiple and single subject candidates, including the World Language Guide. Step 1. Plan. Gather information about one class. Identify an appropriate content focus. Develop a lesson plan based on the California state standards and knowledge of your students. Describe the assets and needs of the whole class and for 3 focus students. Step 2, teach and assess. Teach the plan lesson to students and video record the lesson. Select and annotate clips. Step 3, reflect. Provide information on drawing from student assets and needs. Explain how your lesson was flexible to allow for accommodations and modifications. Indicate what you needed to do to support the 3 focus students. And step 4, apply. Explain what you would do differently to advance the learning of this group of students. And if you were going to teach the lesson again, what would you do differently and why? Multiple subject candidates must demonstrate both a literacy and mathematics instruction within the CalTPA. Candidates may focus Cycle 1 on one of the 2 disciplines, literacy or mathematics, and focus Cycle 2 on the discipline that was not addressed in Cycle 1, or focus one cycle on the integration of literacy with another content area or areas. Each cycle requires learning goals and instructions focused on literacy or mathematics, as well as in the other content areas. Integration of content can occur in one or both of these cycles. Please note that if you do not submit both a literacy-focused and a mathematics-focused cycle, you will not meet the requirements for passing the CalTPA. For single subject candidates, single subject content-specific pedagogies are outlined in the single subject assessment guides. And for world languages, you are expected to teach using the 3 communicative modes: to teach enabling skills like reading and writing, demonstrate in-depth cultural understanding, and a high proficiency of culture that allows for the class to be conducted in the target language. Evidence Table Step 1. What you need to do. You'll gather contextual information, including students' assets and needs. You'll use the California state standards, content-specific pedagogy, and knowledge of your students to develop one lesson plan. Explain how the lesson plan addresses the learning needs of your students and is informed by relevant student assets, as well as how it uses universal design for learning strategies to provide for an inclusive learning environment. And provide key instructional resources and/or materials related to the lesson plan, for example, reading materials, graphic organizers, slides, support documents, educational technology. The evidence to be submitted is a written narrative, getting to know your students, up to 5 pages, a lesson plan, a written narrative lesson plan rationale, and related instructional resources and materials, up to 8 pages. Evidence Table Step 2, teach and assess. You will teach the planned literacy or mathematics lesson or your subject-specific lesson to your students within the school placement. You will video record the full lesson, select 3 video clips that show 1. How you create a positive classroom environment and set expectations for learning, 2. How you engage students in activities and use instructional strategies, and 3. How you clarify next steps for learning. You will annotate the 3 video clips. Annotations include a title and brief rationale for the teaching practices recorded. Annotation titles include creating a positive learning environment, setting expectations for learning, engaging students in content-specific higher order thinking, and monitoring students for student understanding. You will need to submit 3 annotated video clips up to 5 minutes each for this evidence table. Evidence tables steps 3 and 4. Step 3, reflect. You'll provide responses to prompts that describe how successful you were in using student assets and needs to plan an appropriate, relevant, and rigorous lesson for your whole class and for 3 focus students. You will submit a written narrative, reflection on what you learned, up to 3 pages. And in step 4, apply. You will provide responses to prompts regarding how what you learned through completing this assessment cycle will advance your teaching practices. For this step, you will submit a narrative, up to 3 pages of written or up to 5 minutes of video, application of what you learned. Selection and annotation of video clips. This is very important. Video clips can be selected from the video recording of the complete lesson. However, each clip must be continuous and unedited. For example, no additional music or graphics, no breaks in recording to remove quiet time. You may use up to 5 minutes for each clip to demonstrate your ability to address the teaching practices required through the annotation titles. Please note that the length of your video is not the focus of the assessment. You can clearly demonstrate some practices, particularly for younger students, in less than 5 minutes. Your annotations are brief text explanations you provide that are associated with specific points in the video clips, the where. For each annotation, you will include an annotation title, as listed below, to label your explanation, the what, and provide your brief rationale explaining the decisions that you made in your teaching practice at that specific point, the why. Selection and annotation of video clips. Annotation titles are creating a positive learning environment, setting expectations for learning, engaging students in content-specific higher order thinking, and monitoring for student understanding. Important note, each annotation title must be used at least once across the 3 video clips. If appropriate, you may use annotation titles multiple times. For example, 2 video clips could have evidence in support of monitoring for student understanding. Selection and annotation of video clips. Video clip 1 will be the opening of the lesson. You will create a positive classroom environment and setting expectations for learning, up to 5 minutes for this clip. You'll select a clip from a portion of your lesson that establishes a positive classroom environment and establishes learning expectations for the content of the lesson. For example, setting clear expectations, framing the lesson, creating a safe and welcoming environment, greeting students, establishing central questions and/or lesson hook, engaging students, establishing positive rapport. For video clip 2, middle of the lesson, you will select a clip from a portion of your lesson that shows you and the students actively engaged in activities, strategies, and assessments that reflect content-specific higher order thinking. For example, inquiry processes, problem solving, teacher and student discussions that advance understanding of the content, analysis of ideas, connecting ideas, and so forth. Video clip 3, closing the lesson, you will select a clip from the end of the lesson that demonstrates how you summarized and checked for understanding of learning goals and clarified next steps for learning the content. Thinking about the class content, class context information, and students' assets and needs for the whole class and focus students, you will briefly respond to the following prompts to explain how the lesson plan is informed by and addresses 1. Explain how the lesson plan builds on students' prior academic knowledge. 2. Explain how the lesson plan incorporates or builds on students' cultural and linguistic resources. And 3. Explain why you selected the learning activities and how you will engage students in higher order thinking. 4. Explain why you will use specific instructional strategies and what adaptations you might make to improve student access to learning. 5. Explain your rationale for grouping students in this lesson, whole group, small group, pairs, individual, and why you think this will support student learning. 6. How will you address the academic language development needs of the students you are teaching, including English learners and standard English learners? 7. Explain why you chose particular resources and materials to support student learning. And 8. Explain how the assessments will check on students' understanding of the content taught during the lesson. 9. Explain how the lesson plan addresses the developmental considerations of your students. And 10. Explain how the lesson plan addresses individual needs of the 3 focus students. Evidence to be submitted. Evidence to be submitted is a written narrative, getting to know your students, up to 5 pages, which includes a description of students' assets and needs, contextual information for the class, and a description of 3 focus students' assets and needs. Evidence to be submitted will also include a lesson plan and the written narrative lesson plan rationale and related instructional resources and materials. Rubrics are aligned to the pedagogical steps of plan, teach, and assess, reflect, and apply. Each rubric is framed by an essential question that outlines the knowledge, skills, and abilities assessed within the rubric. The table in this slide is a summary of the essential questions for the 8 rubrics of Cycle 1. Rubric 1.1, how does the candidate's proposed learning goals connect with the prior knowledge and define specific outcomes for students? Rubric 1.2, how does the candidate plan instruction using knowledge of Focus Student 1's assets and needs? Rubric 1.3, how does the candidate plan instruction using knowledge of Focus Student 2's assets and needs? And Rubric 1.4, how does the candidate plan instruction using knowledge of Focus Student 3's assets and needs? Each rubric is divided into 5 levels, with 5 being the highest score. In Level 1, candidate does not identify evidence of student learning. In Level 2, candidate identified evidence of learning that focuses on rote knowledge of content and is partially connected to learning goals. In a Level 3, candidates clearly identify evidence they will look for to assess learning goals. And a Level 4 provides a detailed explanation of proposed adaptations for all students. And a Level 5 is based on universal design for learning principles and provides all students equal access to content by engaging and challenging learning. Rubric 1.5, how does the candidate establish clear learning expectations based on an understanding of students' prior knowledge? And Rubric 1.6, how does the candidate actively engage students in deep learning of content and monitor or assess their understanding? Rubric 1.7, reflect, how does the candidate analyze and describe the impact of their assets and needs based lesson planning, teaching, and assessment of student learning? And Rubric 1.8, your application, how will the candidate apply what they have learned in Cycle 1 about students' learning to future instructional design? In Rubric 1.1, Step 1, Plan, the essential question is how does the candidate's proposed learning goals connect with prior knowledge and define specific outcomes for students? How do proposed learning activities and instructional strategies engage and challenge all students to meet the learning goals. In a level 1, goals are not based on prior knowledge. In a level 2, goals are loosely based on prior knowledge. In a level 3, goals clearly build on prior knowledge. Level 4, a detailed explanation of proposed adaptations and accommodations to support student goals are not based on prior knowledge. Level 5, UDL principles and flexible plan for an inclusive learning environment and reflective of assets and needs. I hope this PowerPoint presentation has been a helpful overview. As the CalTPA coordinator for the University of Redlands, I am here to provide you with additional support. I encourage you to register and download the guide for Instructional Cycle 1. Read the guide carefully and then contact me with further questions.